Welcome, Hop Nation. I'm very excited to have a special guest in Phyllis Webstad from the Orange Shirt Society here in Canada. Before I get started, I want to mention that we're on sacred land, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and I acknowledge them as past, present, and future caretakers of this land. Please enjoy this episode with Phyllis Webstad. Welcome, Hop Nation. Today is really a first for this podcast. I have someone who's truly a living legend, and I'm breaking from traditional format here in terms of the introduction and then go into bio to give my bio on my honored guest today. And it truly is an honor because I've known Phyllis Webstad, the founder of Orange Shirt Day, for almost a decade now. And it's amazing to see what has happened in the past 10 years with this vision that she had. And very seldom do we get a chance to see or hear from what I would call living legend and people who've changed the course of history in the world. And Phyllis is really one of those proud Canadian and that. And Phyllis, I'd like you to introduce yourself because I know you'll do it both in English, but also in your traditional language. So welcome, Phyllis. Thank you, my friend, for giving me the time, because I know your life has gotten a lot busier from the time we sat in the Denny's and Williams Lake talking about things.
Yes. Thanks for having me on your podcast today, Corey. Wade Phyllis Webstad Rensquest, Stracham Chatstum Slakwan. What I said is hello to everyone watching, listening. My name is Phyllis Webstad. I'm from the Kennew Creek, Dog Creek First Nation. I'm coming to you today from Shawatmach-Uluch, the land of the Shuswap people in Williams Lake, BC. My community is about an hour and a half southwest of Williams Lake. The residential school I went to, St. Joseph Mission Indian Residential School, is about 20 minutes out of Williams Lake, and I'm happy to be here. Oh yes, and we are about geography-wise 7 hours drive north of Vancouver and about an hour plane ride to Vancouver. And yes, we do have an airport.
That's awesome. Thank you, Phyllis. And, you know, I'm sure almost everyone is going to know or have heard of Orange Shirt Day and Every Child Matters. For those that don't know the story about why the symbol of an orange shirt, can you tell what Orange Shirt Day, how Orange Shirt Day came about for you?
I am third generation Indian residential school survivor, which means my granny attended for 10 years, all of her 10 children. Granny's eldest grandchild, I'm Granny's second eldest grandchild, and I went. So 3 generations attended, and I lived with my grandmother on the Dog Creek Reserve until I was 10 years old. My mother was so traumatized by her experience that she could not take care of me. So I grew up with my grandmother, and when I turned 6, Granny did what she had always done, because I'd often wondered, why did Granny send me to the mission, is what we called it, and she wouldn't have been put in jail if she didn't send me like she would have with her children. But what I've come to understand is that she was doing what she had always done. It was the thing to do. She had gone, all of her 10 children, and I was her second grandchild. She did what she did, and what like all parents and caregivers do is buy something new to wear for that child to go to school in. I had turned 6 in July in 1973. So as a new 6-year-old, just excited like any other child to be going to school. And Granny, we came to town and I chose a shiny orange shirt for my first day. It had 3 buttonholes and a kind of like a shoelace string in front. And I don't remember anything else, like what other clothing, but I remember the orange shirt. It was the early 70s. It was bright and exciting, just like I felt to be going to school for the first time. And being the early 70s of the hippie era, I guess, that was just like really bright psychedelic colors. And that's what I remember about it. It was like a Nemo orange. And it was, yeah, so I was drawn to that. And when I got to the mission, my clothing was taken away and I never did wear my shirt again. So very quickly, that's the story of my orange shirt.
And, it's amazing that this negative event you've taken and transformed the trauma into an inspiration for something that's become a global movement. And, before we started the podcast, we were talking about how, as I've talked to different clients around the world, they know of Orange Shirt Day and, what it's meant to all of them. And before we came on, you read a chapter from one of the books you have, and I will make sure for everyone listening and watching that we give links and information on all the books, the Orange Shirt Day website, as well as some of the other information that Phyllis may share. But would you do the audience a favor and read that letter to the readers of the Orange Shirt Day book?
We published this, the Orange Shirt Society, in 2020 because we wanted people to know the story of Orange Shirt Day. I did not just get out of bed one day and decide September 30th was Orange Shirt Day. There's a whole list of people that needed and events that needed to be acknowledged. And this is from page 15 and 16. It's my message to the reader. Dear reader, it seems like from the very beginning that this whole orange shirt movement has been divinely guided. For whatever reason, I was chosen to do this work, whether I was ready or not. Things just happened without a lot of trying on my part. People, places, and events just fell into place. I've often wondered why me? As soon as I'd think why me, I would tell myself, why not me? When I was putting together my presentation for speaking, and I was wondering about why my story is so accepted, I thought about it and came up with this. Why is my story so accepted? Number 1, children. My story is easy to understand. 2, non-First Nation people. They can associate, they have families too. Residential school survivors and their families. Number 3, it's also their story. My story opens the door to discussion in a gentle way about a heavy topic. And number 5, that it's time. My story is easy for children to understand. They can associate with shopping, for going back to school, how exciting that is. They can then empathize with how it would feel to have someone take something away that their parents bought for their first day of school. Non-Indigenous people have children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews. They can empathize and think of what it would feel like to have their children suddenly snatched from their homes and arms and be absolutely helpless to do anything about it. They cannot imagine. My story is not unique. Residential school survivors and their families can associate with my orange shirt story. Residential schools happened in Canada from top to bottom, left to right. There are many stories, truths that need to be told and are being told. Families of survivors are finding out why their lives are the way they are. understanding what their parents or grandparents had to live through and how that experience is impacting their lives. The topic of residential schools isn't pleasant. I offer my story in a gentle way as a conversation starter, a door opener to discussion about all aspects of Indian residential school. And lastly, it is time. It is time our truths be heard. It's time that non-Indigenous Canadians know the history of Indian residential schools. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission went across Canada and was wrapping up its tour in 2013 when they came to Williams Lake, BC. Canadians were ready to keep the conversation happening after the TRC wrapped up. And as we know, that was in 2015. I pledge to continue to do my best to be the face of the Orange Shirt movement. I've already met so many amazing people on my travels across Canada, and I've come to witness and realize that our future is in good hands. The children in elementary and high schools get it. They are the generation that will change our society for the better and make sure that this never happens again. I thank everyone that participates and wears an orange shirt on Orange Shirt Day or any day of the year. By wearing an orange shirt, that means you care about what happened to us and that you are taking the time to learn. To us survivors, it is a little bit of justice in our lifetime for what happened to us. We won't be around forever. One day there will be no survivors left in Canada. My hope is Orange Shirt Day will continue to be the vehicle in telling the history long after we are gone. Thank you for taking the time to learn about my story and about Orange Shirt Day. Please know that I do spend countless hours online looking at pictures, watching videos, and reading about what you are all doing. I've always been a person who needed to know everything. It's taken me a while to comprehend that I will never know everything that is happening for Orange Shirt Day. So Gukshem, thank you for doing what you are doing. I want to finish my message to you by saying that I do not claim to represent or speak for other survivors or their families. I share my story and my family's story, which does not represent all other people's thoughts, experiences, or perspectives. All my relations, Phyllis.
Well, what an honor to hear that, Phyllis. And this is an emotional topic, and I can't begin to imagine what it's like for survivors. And now on September 30th, because of the Truth and Reconciliation Act and the action plan number 80, Orange Shirt Day, which was on September 30th, is now also National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. So both are celebrated, or both are remembered and recognized on September 30th.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's amazing that the story of the orange shirt that Granny got you has become this symbol for that movement and the reconciliation part, because I remember when we were sitting talking in 2013, a lot of the focus up to that point was getting the truth, but there hadn't been this move to the reconciliation part. And you had shared how you first needed to do that yourself and move from that, and then to use that trauma and tragedy for a source of inspiration to change. And for anyone listening to that, if we look at all the major game changers through history, the Phyllis Webstads, the Nelson Mandelas, the Gandhis of the world, they had to step out in front of injustice and stuff and take something negative to create that first spark that turns into a flame that becomes the change. And, I think Gandhi's quoted for, be the change you want to see in the world. And you've become that change you wanted to see. And I'm so happy for you and your family and those who've been affected, because I've shared with you, my first boxing coach, Norm LaRue, went to Kamloops Indian Residential School, which was in the news for all the wrong reasons in the past year because of the mass grave of 268 people that was found. And
it was 215.
215, sorry.
Yeah, in Kamloops,
sorry. Yeah. So this is such a major inspiration, but taking something that's so negative that we're finding out more and more, literally daily. And there's probably a coming back podcast we were talking about. But what I'd like to hear from you right now, Phyllis, is what does it mean to you seeing what's become, and what are some of your favorite stories of impact that you've heard?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now with the missing children and unmarked burials, one of the sites that everyone is seeing is the orange shirt being worn, not just on September 30th, by Indigenous people, survivors and their families, but being worn almost every day of the year somewhere in Canada. I would think that an orange shirt is being worn, and when children are being announced, people do wear orange shirts, Indigenous and non, to remember and honor, and to show support, and so it's become a symbol of the children. It will continue to be that. And hearing from families of survivors that said, and I heard one yesterday that said, because of the whole orange shirt movement and the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, that her mother finally started talking about her experience and said that maybe it's about time I started talking about it. And I just love to hear that, because we can't heal from what we don't talk about. So many survivors have gone to their graves without talking about their experience, and some surviving will never talk about it, and that's okay. Like, there's no must, but it does, the ones that do talk about how, and she talked about how her mother felt to be free of that, and to, like, oh my goodness, that's what it feels like to not carry all of that anymore. And the children, I get mail from children across Canada. I need to figure out a better system of responding, but they are, I'm there. What did somebody say? They're a fan of Phyllis Webstad. And the person said, can I use that word? A fan? But yeah, and when I go into elementary schools, the children, they've been learning about this for years. Often they know more about their residential schools than their families do. They go home and teach their families about it. And so that, to me, it's such an honor when I go there. And I know when I was on my tour in 2019, and I was in New Brunswick area, and I was getting out of my vehicle, and it was recess, and the children seen me getting out of my vehicle, and the one hollers, "Are you famous?" And then the question I often get asked is, "Are you rich?" It's like, no, that hasn't happened yet. I might be famous, but I'm not rich. And yeah, and I've had so many experiences doing this and talking to other survivors. And I know when I was on my tour across Canada, I would often be introduced as the real Phyllis Webstad. because people don't realize that I'm alive, that survivors are alive, that this is recent history. They think it's 100 years ago and we're all, we're not on the earth anymore. And
Yeah, or you look pretty young for a
yeah, and
survivor.
our residential school, that's what one survivor in your area, when we went there, told me. He said, I'm surprised. I'll be 55 this year in 2022. And our residential school here, the mission closed in 1981. So survivors are 47 years old and older. We still have children in our public school system that have parents that attended residential school. So a bit of a different dynamic there. And I could go on and on about it has its challenges, but it also, there's so much good that has happened. And yeah.
Well, and and I know you have other commitments, so I want to honor the time, but I have kind of one more thing that I want to ask or to have you speak to, and that's, what's one thing you ask of the audience or encourage the audience to do at this stage?
Mm-hmm. That's a common question I get asked. I do presentations, and for a lot of companies and government lately. Not so in the early days, it was a lot of elementary and high school, but with virtual, it's been more corporations and government. And I get asked that question. And we at the Society are going to be developing some material and possibly a video or two about that, because people want to help. They want to do something. And what I offer, and you'd get different answers who you talk to, and this is just me. What I say is reading. And just because I'm Indigenous doesn't mean I know everything. And this is for me as well. I need to read. There's our books, for instance, the Orange Shirt Day book. There's the Truth and Reconciliation Commission volumes that they produced, and the calls to action. And this is volume 4 on missing children and unmarked burials. It was known that these children were there. It wasn't, they say, discovered across. When I see that on the news, it wasn't just a discovery. Our people have known about it for a long time.
Well, I remember, people from the Kamloops school saying, and they knew exactly where it was too.
Yeah, where the bodies were, and some even witnessed or helped with the burials often. And
imagine.
And this one, my publisher bought me, 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act by Bob Joseph. And in my presentation, I touch on the Indian Act, about the impact it's had on the generations of my family, and it's still alive today in government. And for myself, I say suit up and show up. What that means is, for myself, for instance, to get involved and to be able to tell my orange shirt story. I was not working at the time, and that's when I met you, Corey. You were helping me do a business plan to buy a travel agency, and that didn't work out. And but things happen for a reason, and I wasn't working. So I heard about the TRC coming to Williams Lake, and I showed up at the meeting. I got up, had my shower, got ready, went and found where the meeting was. And I thought, I'm a survivor. They're not going to kick me out of the room, and they'd probably welcome my help. And I was able to tell my orange shirt story because I showed up that day. Like eventually I did. And I say that to everyone, to find out what nation is in where you live, whose territory is it, Was there a residential school? Is that building still there? Who are the survivors or the families? And if you have, I know a lot have lunch and learns or different events, find someone that would be willing, and we need to hear from the families as well and the impacts of the residential schools. There were 150,000 children taken from their homes and their families, and all the survivors have a story, their families have a story. And if I know the powwow is universal across Canada, if you see a powwow in your area, phone the number on there for more information if you don't know anybody. And our people are welcoming. That's why everybody's here, is because we welcomed people, and we still do. And show up at the powwow. And if you want to know about it, ask somebody that's sitting beside you. And I don't know everything about the dances, and so when people ask me, it's like, oh, you better ask that person there. But yeah, so it's creating conversation, and then maybe you'll create a relationship with someone. And what I say as well is that it's not up to me to tell you what to do. That once you're out there and you meet people, what to do will come naturally. And it might be, I don't know what it could be. It could be, because I know in my family, like I have a family member that's in a homeless shelter. You know, she has a story of why she's there, and she needs help. And our people do need help. And yeah, so that's my kind of take on that. And if you ask others, you'll probably get a different answer to that as well. And they're all, you know, not to say mine is the right or wrong, they're all valid. And we all come to this from a different life story and a different perspective. So, yeah.
And I want to thank you first and foremost for the person you are, Phyllis. I mean, you're just a good person. You've done amazing things. And I, you know, with my executive coaching clients, a lot of times I say you need courage in advance of confidence. And you've been one of those people in my life that's demonstrated that, because I remember the conversations around this and going, who am I? Right. And all of that stuff, that early days, 2013 to, who are you? And it was that courage in advance of having the confidence that's actually turned into this amazing movement that's created this ripple effect, that it's expanded to touch so many other areas as a source of inspiration, and that story that the world gets to benefit from, that's drawing the appropriate attention and resources to a problem and an injustice historically that you and your people are very passionate about. And I want to thank you and just honor you for everything you've done, and for all of those that are attached to the work you do. Thank you, Phyllis.
Kukshem, thank you for having me on your podcast. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but that's good. I haven't done many podcasts.
Excellent. Well, and I'd love to have you back, because we're talking about there's a part 2 and kind of the next stage of what this can do. And, if you're up for it, we'll talk about that in the future when we're ready. So thank you again. Thank you, Hop Nation, for tuning in this week for another wonderful episode. And if you haven't already, again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us, and share with friends. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.